everyone, welcome to this Transformation Tribe Talk. I am delighted today to be joined by Dean Hulse and David Yazdi, the founders of HY Solicitors, and we're sitting in your brilliant offices in Sandbrook House in Rochdale today, so thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because we've known each other for about 13 years.
Yeah, probably about that.
Yeah. And we met when we worked for a company called Mears Group, and I was looking after customers, you were looking after people, and
yes.
Now we're sitting today in your offices that are a solicitor's office.
Yeah, so a bit different.
Big difference. So transformation, and that's what we're talking about. So transformation in terms of your careers and transformation in terms of your business. Really looking forward to hearing about that journey and the capability that you've built and changed and pivoted. Very exciting. In terms of your backstory though, which is equally as exciting, Dean, tell us about how you two first met.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's probably fair to say, isn't it? We met at school. We went to the same school. We were both into music at that time. David would probably tell you he plays a number of instruments, but at that time he was well known for playing the drums. I played the guitar, so we certainly knew of each other at that time. And I guess as we got older and started to play in bands, I think our paths crossed more at that time. We did. We both played together in a local band called Bye Bye Johnny, and we did a lot of good things together in the band at that time. I'm sure if you've got anything more you want to know about that, we'd be quite happy to share some stories.
Different podcast, that one maybe.
It could be. Though it did form an important an aspect of our journey once we get into it, to talk about how we got to where we were today. I mean, we always go back to that as a reference point because it is a really important aspect of how we how we see business and the way that we've developed this at HY Solicitors.
Yeah, fab. And you really like each other as well, still like each other. Even still like
so.
You've just been on a holiday, the family's together, so you are really aligned in your thinking and your ethics and your values and how you go about things, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fundamental to what we've done. We are very aligned, I think very similar, very patient, very willing to listen to each other, and while naturally, you will have differing views on things, I think neither of us ever want to sort of force our view on the other.
Yeah.
It's very much we need to find a middle ground, and that's been really important. And ultimately we were friends, and we still are friends. And that can often be an issue in business with the pressures of business, but somehow we managed to find a way around that. It just works. Yeah, and
I would still share the view that people often say that you shouldn't go into business with friends, and I'd very much say that we're an exception to that rule. I think we're very fortunate, as David said, to be very aligned in how we view things, how we see things. But yeah, I think it's been quite a special journey.
We had a bit of a weird connection sometimes. Dean will turn up to the office, we'll often go to lunch together, we'll have meetings, and he said, I've been thinking about this, and before he says it, I kind of know what he's going to say.
Wow.
And when he does, I go, I've been thinking the exact same thing. It's strange, isn't it? Quite often, because it's just, we seem to see the same things evolving, and then if there's an issue, we both raise it, but in a really constructive way.
Yeah, I think we both recognise just how fortunate we are to be where we are. The journey goes so fast as well. And we, sometimes you in business you've got to be planning, looking forward. But we do try to remind each other to be in the moment as well and enjoy it, because it moves fast. And for 95% of the time, we're enjoying what we do. Yeah,
I was thinking about your musical backgrounds, and one of the things that it says on your website, and I know when David, you and I last met, you were talking about creative solutions. You're thinking outside of the box. You're trying to do things differently. So just talk us through what the thought process was then, David, at the start when you decided to set this up, which started in your bedroom, I believe. You launched the business from your bedroom. I think, so talk us through the thought process what inspired you to do it?
I think I think being in the band was an element of that, in terms of it gave us that that freedom and that platform to think, we can do something together, we enjoy being creative. But then coupled with that, there was a mix of probably confidence and naivety, I think.
Right.
I think in terms of the creative side, the bedrock of that ultimately is that neither of us worked in a law firm, have ever worked in a law firm. We've never
That's
worked
the
in
bit that I find mind-blowing.
private practice. So we came into it with a complete blank canvas, really. We kind of knew, just as any, Dean was already a lawyer at that point, so he understood the world, but not the private practice world. So there's elements that we understood, but I think we were very much focused on, we actually want to do something that's not just the traditional model.
Yeah.
And so, it was going into it with everything I'd learned through the likes of working at Mears, through employment that I'd had following that, which was in aerospace. So it was combining all those different things and bringing it together and saying, how can we sort of fit this into delivering legal services, taking it all and adopting it, really.
That's brilliant, because one of the concepts of the Transformation Tribe is lifelong learning. So just learning as you go, learning in business, learning personally. So have you both studied, requalified, refreshed qualifications in this process?
But probably David more so than I. I think the original plans for the business changed over time. And David would be a better place to tell you about his journey. But one thing I did was I originally qualified as a solicitor. So I worked in local and central government as a solicitor, but then went on to qualify as a barrister, so I could have that sort of experience, I guess, of both sides of the profession. And I think it's been invaluable, really, in terms of for me personally, in terms of the growth of the business, being able to have that specialist legal set from what I'd gained from being a solicitor, and also through the work that I did in the course over the years as a barrister. And of course you qualified as a solicitor yourself.
Yeah, so I guess my situation is even more unique in that I was HR, so I'd done my qualification, I'd got my experience working in HR, but it was the employment law side of HR, the technical side, that I really liked. And so that journey actually started when I was at Mears. I went to do the GDL, wanted to retrain, become a solicitor. Now, when we actually set HY up as a firm, I wasn't qualified at that point. I was still studying, I was finalising the LPC, and I did my training in my own firm with Dean as my training principal, which is pretty remarkable, to have your friend deliver that. We worked together, and I think that was amazing. That's probably, again, one of the reasons why we're so connected, to have that experience. So I brought like the private sector mentality, if you like. Dean, as he said, worked in more local government and the public sector, but that combination, as we'll probably come on to, has paid dividends, because the firm now has two very specialist focuses. It's commercial, it works with businesses, but then we split off a proportion of the firm and created HY Education Solicitors, which is the only law firm in the country that's dedicated to schools. Brilliant. Exclusively to schools. And so it's that combination, you see, that has sort of led us down that path.
So you found a niche, you've identified a gap in the market, gone for it, and it sounds like you've done it really, really well, which is just, I guess, when you say you started from a blank canvas, you've got no preconceptions, you're not in a box and having to work within a box, you're setting your own boundaries, I guess, or your own vision.
Yeah, and I think I think I touched on at the beginning about the importance of our upbringing and being in a band, because if you think about the idea of being in a band, when you are taking it seriously as we did, it's all about creativity, doing something that's not been done before, if you want to have any chance of making it in that industry. So it's kind of almost inevitable that we were going to create something that, wasn't your traditional law firm as you probably know it. It was always going to be something different. Because, as I say, everything that we've really known over the years as we've grown up is about creativity, and that is probably how we've reached the point of HY Education as the school's only law firm.
So David, HYS came first. That's sort of like the first under the brand. So just explain what it is, why it's different, and how it works.
Yeah, so HYS Solicitors is a commercial law firm, so it's business to business. That was always important to us from the start. We wanted to be business focused only. And yeah, I think we set out initially, you know, as we've talked about, not having any idea about how, well, some idea of how private practice law firms are run, but not that much. And we set out to create this wholly different idea. I think as you go along, you start realizing there's pros and cons to not knowing much. The cons are that over time, you start realizing actually having the appropriate case management software, the billing software, things like that, that is what we could have taken from having the experience in that world. But then the pros have been actually almost turning the legal services sector on its head. So we view it as, at the end of the day, it's the services sector. We serve the client. But I think with the legal sector, there's an air of pomposity sometimes. There's an air of you need us, you come to us for help, and you do what we say. And so people are often quite, not afraid, but quite unnerved about approaching lawyers, don't necessarily feel they have the best experience when dealing with lawyers, like they're talked down to sometimes, they're made to feel a bit silly sometimes. And I think it was that side we thought, no, that is just not us. It's not us anyway.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's all about the client experience. Yes, you've got to be good at what you do, you've got to be technically competent, but the client has to come away having enjoyed the experience of working with you. And you're working with clients who are dealing with some really stressful, difficult things, whether it's litigation, whether it's buying and selling property, a business, all these things are usually coupled with deadlines, timescales, pressures, things like that, financial things that, unless you're able to make clients feel calm and come away, they're not necessarily going to have a good experience. So that's, I guess, is our core focus. And one of the ways we achieve that is that we've tried to create a system. We don't necessarily want people to be robots and all behaving the same way, because you've got to be adaptable to different situations and the different personalities you're dealing with. But we've sort of defined key behaviours, key competencies, I
for
suppose,
your team,
for the team, that we expect. And they're really basic things. We call it our service charter, and it's just sort of a bullet point list of things in terms of our expectations around behaviours, about how you interact with clients and potentially third parties as well, other solicitors, things like that, that ultimately, hopefully, and sort of embodies that, what we're trying to achieve, that experience, that when clients deal with us, they come away feeling, gosh, that I really feel better after that experience. I feel like, I feel confident about what I'm going to do next. And so part of that is we've brought all the team through from being trainees. We're a team of, I think, 11 people now, and everybody's come through the ranks, if you like, as people we've trained. So
that's wonderful, because I guess they're really invested then. They put the effort in, you've put effort in, and you value them and you're helping them develop. So they must feel almost like they've got a bit of ownership over the business, really.
Yeah, it's quite we know the legal sector is very individualistic, whereas here we're very much like a family. We're a team. Everything is about being a team here, which, as David's touched on there, we have the customer service charter, which are just lots of small things to make sure that we do things well in terms of the overall experience. And our clients will see from even the way that we dress. We don't turn up in 3-piece suits and things like that. It's all about, as David says, the overall experience. People see us as relaxed, and obviously when we're looking at recruitment there, people's personalities and how they're able to interact with people on a level, not in a cold, standoffish way, which sometimes you will see in a traditional setting, is something that we want to avoid. So looking at those aspects of what people can bring, it includes not just the technical excellence that you need to be a good lawyer, but that personal and the personality side that needs to go into it as well is really important.
Fabulous. And then the HY education.
Yeah.
HY education came second. So you obviously identified a gap in the market and opportunity there because you're the only law firm in the UK providing this service.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes, things can come along which present an opportunity, and sometimes you just need that little bit of luck as well sometimes. And I guess some of the work that I was doing before we started HY Solicitors, I was working in Herefordshire, doing a lot of work for their local authority. I started doing a lot of work for the schools, so I'd be acting for schools in employment tribunals, working in the criminal courts in certain cases, and other types of specialist tribunals and advisory work. And when I left Herefordshire to come back to Rochdale to be working with David on HY Solicitors, we had this really nice cohort of schools that started coming back to us saying, well, we really like to stay with you, which I'd never spoken to them about it, I'd never even thought about it. And they started using us for various bits and pieces, and it was at that point that we started to discuss, are there any law firms in the country that are just dedicated to the education sector? And of course, there were none.
Wow.
And that's really where HYE was born. We thought some big decisions were made at that time as well, because we decided to set up a separate firm there, and that wasn't an easy decision to make, because what we did consider and discuss was, well, do we just set up a department for it? That would have been the easy thing to do, set up an education department and kind of see how it goes. Well, sometimes you need to be brave and make a decision, and that required setting up a whole new separate law firm with separate regulation and everything that goes into running a second business, and that was a critical decision that we made, and absolutely the right one.
So when you're talking about those critical decisions and lifelong learning along the way, so you're learning about how to run a business, how to scale a business, what options are open to you, what has been, would you say, the scariest thing that you've faced on this journey so far?
I think just going back to what David said at the beginning, there is a fair degree of naivety that goes into this, because there's always just, if you want, you've got to be dedicated, you've got to be consistent to do this. So I don't think there's anything that's really been scary as such. Of course, I think in the early stage, I think anybody who's running a business will say, you do need to try and get through that first phase of 3, 4, 5 years, because it's only once you get to that point you can kind of look back and reflect about how much you really didn't know. But I think obviously the financial side of it is difficult. In the early days it's more about getting clients. You need to get clients in. And there's so much that goes in just to getting clients. In our early days, we think, well, we just do a bit of a marketing campaign. Now, there's a lot more that goes into these things than you first realise. It was always kind of do the work, and marketing and things were, it was quite down the list of things, because we were used to getting things done and just trying to get the work done. But you learn and you grow, and you've got to have eyes over every aspect of your business to do it well. I think that's where you really develop after that first 4 or 5 years. But certainly, I can always remember that in the early days, clients it was an issue, wasn't it? Because we had some really fantastic clients, but a small number. Yeah. And we were, again, just having a little bit of luck along the way. One particular local authority used us for many years, and it was so important for us at that time, whilst we were learning, and whilst we were growing the business as well. And I think you do get a little bit of luck along the way. You do need that.
I think in terms of being scared, I guess if you knew the things you don't know at the beginning, you would probably be very put off.
That's a good way of putting it.
Because you don't realise how difficult it is, and it's one of those things, isn't it? If it was easy, a lot more people would do it. And I think it's not knowing what the difficulties are is the thing that allows you to keep going, I think, because then when you face them, you think, well, I've come this far, I'm going to keep pushing and overcome them. But there's always a fair bit of anxiety that still clings to you now, when you're running business, because you're always looking forward. You know, you do have to take stock sometimes and think, actually, look at what we've achieved from where we were even just a year ago.
Yeah.
But you're always looking forward in business, and that itself brings with it, there's always a constant pressure and a stress, because you can't stand still. You've always got to be changing. So but yeah, I think for me personally, the scariest thing is always going to be, where do we get new business from? And as Dean said, I think when you get to a certain point, 4 or 5 years in, it's almost like a bit of a tipping point, and it's like, actually, new businesses arriving organically now, because we've got a big enough client base, enough of a reputation that it's generating its own new business. But you do, of course, still need to keep pushing it as well.
So at the Transformation Tribe, one of the things that I talk about with lots of people all the time is people-powered transformation, because in my experience, and I'm sure in yours, you can have the best tech, the best systems, the best IT, but it's actually people who make or break the customer experience, the culture. Tell us a bit about your people proposition and the team that you've got here.
I think when we first started the firm, of course, it was just, as we said earlier, it was me, David, and we worked out of the spare bedroom until we got our first offices locally. I think our first foray into recruitment was my mum.
I love it. I just love
Of
that.
course, I didn't call her mum in the office. it was Dom. But in all seriousness, that she performed such an important role in terms of setting up administrative processes that we had. And actually, that role that she had was an administrative role we call legal coordinator. We still have that role today, and it's the front door to our business. And
we did pay her as well.
We did. We did.
I'm glad about that.
We did pay her. But I guess in terms of customer service, she was bought into that immediately, and you could see between the three of us that as the business was growing, that having that, almost replicating that in terms of personalities we're having in the business was going to be critical. And so I think one of the intentional decisions that we made as the business grew was that we wanted to grow our own. So in terms of trainee solicitors, we brought through many trainee solicitors locally as well. We wanted to support development of people who got the passion and desire to get into law locally. That was a big thing. Developing them in what we probably say would be the HY way. And you can see as you go out into the offices, some of our senior staff there are the same people that train through. So it's not a case of just training, always moving some staff moving on. There is for staff, there is a pathway there right through to wherever they want to get in their careers. And I think again that's why we do have that consistency in terms of us as a brand of how we deliver our legal services, that people would identify the HY way of giving legal advice, and it's the way that we deliver it, the personalities that we have. As I say, we've always looked to identify the right people who could essentially step into our shoes as the business grows at all levels. And you can certainly, when you go out there, you probably feel quite like a very, very much a family team.
Yeah, it's definitely a sense of team, and that's got to be a real sort of selling point to future talent that you're looking to bring into the business, because to have these pathways and to work for a great team and to be in a people-focused sort of business is
it's an accelerated pathway as well, because like if you speak to anyone out there, if you go to a bigger firm, there's more layers, and it takes a long time to develop and get the opportunities to develop. So it's the nature of being a smaller firm, but also I guess we've been described as nurturing before in terms of how we develop our staff, how we look after and make sure that they're given exposure, but in a controlled way, so that they can really develop quite quickly.
Brilliant. So you've talked about the future. What's the master plan then? What's the vision?
The vision is to be a household name in the education sector.
Yeah.
So that is our vision.
Okay.
So basically any school in the country, when they think of law, they think of HY.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we're still well on that journey.
Yeah.
But it's good, isn't it? And you sound like you've got a great foothold in there. So
It's the USP is huge, and I think as Dean pointed out, it's that point of saying, do we become do we make it departmental, or should it be a firm that stands on its own 2 feet? If we were departmental, there are some firms much bigger than us that are education specialists. You know, they are very big players in the education sector, but there's still a law firm that does serves other sectors as well. Yeah, and so it was that one small thing of saying, actually, let's just separate it out. Yes, it doubles the cost of everything. We need to do 2 lots of accounts, 2 lots of SRA registration. You know, there's 2 case management systems, but we think it will be worth it because it'll give us that USP, and that's the bit that we sort of hang our hats on, really, in terms of, and also how we deliver the services that we've carried through from those early days of HY Solicitors as well. They're not being in the traditional model. I think all those things combined, hopefully, well, it's gone well so far anyway, in terms of that firm, even though it's been going for half the time compared to overall from when we started the journey, it's accelerated much quicker.
It's just, I just think it's fantastic, and I think you've got all the things that people talk about in business and leadership when you talk about creating that compelling story. You've got such a great backstory that is integrally part of how you do things. It's not just a marketing ploy, it is genuine, and when you see you both talking together, you can feel how genuine it is, and you can see the connection. And then the fact that you've made these brave decisions with purpose for your clients, they must see that must be a really strong selling point to a client when you come and say, we did this, we made this decision to set up a separate business to serve you. That must mean something. It would mean something to me if I was a client in the education.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that is often fed back to me is that we speak the language at schools, and for anybody who works in that sector, it's got unique regulatory frameworks, the types of systems they use, the type of guidance that they utilise, and so on. And it can often be the case when I meet a new client that they're almost explaining their world at first, because their experience of dealing with lawyers is that if they're dealing with, for instance, an employment lawyer that doesn't work with schools, that they need to almost like to educate them.
Have a glossary.
Glossary of terms. And it's always quite nice to say, we don't need to do that, and you can quite quickly impress upon you on the knowledge that you have, and that's what they want to feel. They want you to feel that you understand their world, and it's critical, because you've got to have commercial awareness of what they do and what makes them tick, essentially. And it would be very difficult to do that if you're not immersed in it every single day. It's a completely different world to the types of clients that we have in the business world that we deal with through HY Solicitors.
Well, it's been great talking to you both. I think your story is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next, because I know you've got some great ideas and a fantastic vision. If you're interested in finding out more about HY Solicitors, both the company website, links are in the bio below. Also, David and Dean's LinkedIn links if you want to have a chat, or you're interested in working with them, for them, or you're interested in their services. They'd be absolutely delighted to speak to you. Thanks very much, guys. Let's do a cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.